Love can build a person into something softer, warmer, more human. But sometimes, in the wrong hands, love becomes a beautiful trap, one lined with promises, kisses, and lies sharp enough to cut deeper than any knife. This is the story of a woman who built an empire with bruised hands and sleepless nights, only to nearly lose it all when she mistook deception for devotion. It is a story about power, heartbreak, betrayal, redemption, and the kind of victory that only comes after a person has been shattered and still chooses to rise. Hello, my amazing people. Wherever you're watching from today, this story is especially for you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please take a second to subscribe, like, and share, because the stories here are made for hearts that still believe people can fall, heal, and come back stronger than ever. On the 42nd floor of a glass tower in downtown Los Angeles, Mia Bennett stood barefoot beside a wall of windows, staring at a city that glittered like a promise she no longer trusted. The skyline stretched wide under the bruised purple of evening. Headlights bled into the streets below like molten gold. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, swallowed by the hum of traffic and the muted throb of rooftop music drifting from another building. Inside her penthouse office, the scent of sandalwood candles and expensive leather mixed with the bitterness of untouched coffee gone cold. To the world, Mia Bennett was a phenomenon, founder of Bennett House International, real estate mogul, luxury hotel investor, magazine cover darling, the self-made millionaire who had once sold pastries at bus stops with her mother and turned that hunger into a multi-million-dollar empire before the age of 35. But tonight, with mascara smudged beneath her eyes and a diamond engagement ring weighing heavily on her finger like a handcuff, Mia looked less like a legend and more like a woman standing at the edge of a silent collapse. Behind her, on the mahogany desk, her phone lit up again. Adrian calling. She didn't answer. Her throat tightened, her pulse thundered, because 3 minutes earlier, a message had arrived from an unknown number. One photo, no text. Adrian, shirt half-buttoned, laughing in the candlelit corner of a private lounge, his hand on the waist of another woman. And not just any woman. Claire Dawson. The woman who had once called Mia's sister. The woman Mia had trusted with her business, her secrets, and the softest parts of her heart. The city glittered on. Mia's breathing grew shallow. If the two people she trusted most had been lying to her, then what exactly had they already taken? Mia had not always belonged in rooms lined with crystal and marble. She came from Southside Chicago, from a 2-bedroom apartment with cracked windows and a landlord who ignored winter leaks. She came from mornings that smelled like frying dough and sugar because her mother, Helen Corleone, woke before sunrise to make pastry she sold from a tiny roadside cart. She came from a childhood where bills sat on the kitchen table like threats and where dreams had to be whispered quietly because saying them too loudly made disappointment worse. As a girl, Mia learned 3 things early. Poverty had a sound, the scrape of her mother counting coins at midnight. Shame had a taste, watered-down soup on nights they pretended they weren't hungry. And survival had a face, her mother's. Helen was not educated, but she was wise in the way pain can educate a person. She would wipe flour from her hands, look Mia in the eye, and say, "No one is coming to save you, baby, so become the kind of woman who can save herself." Mia believed her. She studied like her life depended on it, because in many ways it did. She won scholarships, worked double shifts, cleaned offices, sold cosmetics online, bought a rundown duplex at 24 with every dollar she had, and renovated it herself with blistered hands and borrowed tools. She flipped it for a profit, then another, then another. By 30, she owned properties across 3 states. By 34, she was a millionaire. By 36, she was a woman whose name made investors listen and competitors nervous. But success had not healed everything. She could command a boardroom, close an 8-figure deal, and silence arrogant men with a single glance. But at night, when the city quieted and the lights dimmed, loneliness would sit beside her like an old ghost. She had built security, she had built wealth, she had built a reputation no one could easily dismiss. She had not built a home. That was the ache she never confessed publicly. Not to investors, not to journalists, not even to the thousands of women who wrote her emails saying she inspired them. Only a few people knew the real Mia. Helen, whose hands had grown softer with age, but whose eyes remained sharp. Noah Ripley, Mia's chief operations officer, a brilliant and blunt former architect with the patience of a saint and the instincts of a storm warning. He had been with her for 8 years, loyal, protective, sometimes too honest for comfort. And Claire Dawson. Claire had met Mia in graduate school in New York, back when both of them still wore thrift store blazers and dreamed over cheap wine. Claire was magnetic, quick-witted, stylish, socially gifted, the kind of woman that made strangers feel like old friends. While Mia was disciplined and private, Claire was effortless and warm. They balanced each other, or so Mia had believed. Over the years, Claire became more than a friend. She became a partner in certain public-facing ventures. She handled charity galas, media relations, branding events. She was often the smiling bridge between Mia's steel and the world's expectations. If Mia was the engine, Claire was the polish. And somewhere beneath that polished loyalty, something darker had been growing for years. But Mia did not see it then. She only saw the comfort of familiarity. The one person who could tease her out of a bad mood, zip her into a gown before an event, and finish her sentences during interviews. "You need a life," she used to laugh, leaning against Mia's kitchen island with a glass of champagne. "I have a life." "No, darling, you have a schedule." It was Claire, ironically, who first pushed Mia towards love, and it was at a charity auction at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel that love arrived wearing a midnight blue tuxedo and a smile that felt practiced enough to be dangerous, but tender enough to disarm her. His name was Adrian Sullivan. He was tall, composed, devastatingly handsome in a way that made women notice and men straighten their posture. But what unsettled Mia was not his face, it was the way he looked at her as though he saw the woman beneath the headlines. Not the millionaire, not the mogul. Her. When Mia accidentally outbid herself during a tense paddle war over a vintage painting because Claire whispered the wrong lot number and made her laugh, Adrian leaned over from the next table and murmured, "That may be the most expensive smile I've ever seen." She turned, amused despite herself. "Are you mocking me?" "Admiring your confidence," said he smoothly, "and maybe your terrible auction technique." His voice was warm whiskey and velvet. His eyes held a calm intelligence. He introduced himself as a private equity advisor who had recently relocated from San Francisco. They talked for 6 minutes before the next lot began, but somehow those 6 minutes felt unusually intimate. He knew art, architecture, and jazz. He didn't fawn over her success. He didn't ask for selfies or business advice. He asked what kind of life she wanted when she wasn't working. No one asked her that. Later that night, he sent flowers to her penthouse, not roses, but white orchids, elegant, restrained. Attached was a note in neat handwriting, "For the woman who made a crowded room feel quiet. Dinner?" Claire squealed when she saw the note. Helen narrowed her eyes when Mia mentioned him over the phone. Noah simply asked, "How much do you actually know about him?" "Enough to have dinner," Mia replied. "Just don't confuse charm for character." She rolled her eyes, but the warning lodged somewhere in the back of her mind. Still, she went. Dinner became conversation. Conversation became laughter. Laughter became late-night drives through Mulholland, barefoot dancing in the kitchen, and slow mornings where Adrian made coffee exactly how she liked it. Dark, no sugar, a little cinnamon. He learned her scars carefully, like someone tracing the edges of broken glass without bleeding. He knew she hated thunder because storms reminded her of childhood nights when rain leaked into their apartment. He knew she overworked when anxious. He knew she never cried in front of people unless the pain was unbearable. And when she finally let herself cry, after a brutal negotiation and an ugly online scandal stirred up by a rival developer, Adrian held her against his chest and whispered, "You don't always have to be the strongest person in the room." For a woman who had been strong for too long, that sentence felt like salvation.
The city began to see them together. Magazine blogs called them the power couple no one saw coming. Claire adored him publicly. Helen remained cautious. Noah disliked him almost immediately. "He's too perfect," Noah muttered after a bored dinner. "Maybe you're too suspicious." "No, I just know when someone studies a room before he speaks. He's always calculating." Mia bristled. "You don't have to like who I date." "I don't. I just don't want your private life becoming a business liability." That word, liability, infuriated her. Because for once, Adrian didn't feel like risk. He felt like relief. When he proposed on the Amalfi Coast during a business retreat turned romantic getaway, beneath a moonlit terrace draped in bougainvillea and candlelight, Mia said yes before fear could catch up. His hands trembled as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "I know you built yourself alone," he told her, voice low and sincere, "but you were never meant to carry life alone." She believed him. God help her. She believed him. Back in Los Angeles, wedding plans moved quickly. Claire insisted on helping. "Trust me," she said, waving design boards around Mia's penthouse. "If you're going to become a bride, at least let it be iconic." Mia laughed more than she had in years. She slept better. She started delegating more at work, letting Adrian sit in on informal strategy conversations, asking his opinion on a boutique hospitality acquisition in Miami, sharing pieces of the empire she had once guarded like a fortress. He never pushed too hard. That was what made it dangerous. He offered suggestions modestly. He asked careful questions. He made himself useful. And slowly, almost invisibly, he became part of the machinery. Noah noticed first. A wire transfer discrepancy, a delayed escrow release, a vendor contract routed through a shell consulting firm Adrian had recommended. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to feel off. When Noah brought it to Mia, she was exhausted from wedding fittings, investor dinners, and an expansion deal in Las Vegas. "You think my fiancé is stealing from me?" she snapped. "I think someone is moving money in ways that don't make sense. Then investigate the transactions, but stop implying things you can't prove." Noah's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to protect you." "I didn't ask you to protect me." The silence that followed tasted bitter. Noah left her office without another word. That night, Adrian found her pacing the penthouse in silk pajamas, anger still simmering beneath her skin. "Noah oversteps," she said. Adrian handed her a glass of wine. "People who are used to being needed don't always handle change well." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're trusting someone else now, building a future. Maybe he's afraid he's losing influence." It sounded reasonable in the moment. So reasonable. That was how manipulation worked, not as a slap, but as a whisper that sounded like common sense. A week later, Claire arrived at Mia's penthouse, flushed with excitement and carrying fabric samples. "You won't believe who wants to feature your wedding. A luxury lifestyle spread. Exclusive photos. This is huge." Mia laughed. "I'm not turning my marriage into a media event." Claire smirked. "Too late. You're already a media event." They spent the afternoon tasting cakes and debating flowers. Sunlight poured across marble floors. Music drifted from hidden speakers. For a few sweet hours, Mia felt like an ordinary woman planning an extraordinary day. Then Claire stepped onto the balcony to take a call. Mia, searching for her tablet in the living room, heard Claire's voice through the cracked glass door. Low, urgent, nothing like her usual polished tone. "Not yet," she whispered. "She still trusts me. Don't rush it." Mia froze. The wind carried the next words away. By the time Claire returned, smiling and apologizing, Mia had already moved back to the kitchen, pretending not to notice. But a splinter had entered her heart. Who had Claire been talking to, and why did it sound like strategy? That night, Mia couldn't sleep. Adrian lay beside her, one arm draped across her waist, breathing steadily. Moonlight silvered the edges of his face. He looked peaceful, beautiful, innocent. But the mind, once disturbed, begins to collect patterns. Claire's strange call, Noah's warning, the transfer discrepancies. The way Adrian sometimes glanced at her phone screen when it lit up. The way he asked about account authorizations under the pretense of learning how her world worked. The way Claire and Adrian sometimes seemed to share a glance too fast to interpret. At 2:17 a.m., Mia slipped carefully out of bed and padded to the kitchen, where the city lights shimmered through the dark. She opened her laptop, pulled up internal reports, cross-checked vendor approvals, dug through emails. At first, nothing. Then, something. A consultancy invoice approved through Claire's events division, linked to a company Adrian had casually mentioned over dinner weeks earlier. Then another. Then a property escrow adjustment requiring secondary verbal authorization, logged on a night Mia had been out of town. Her chest tightened. This could still be coincidence, couldn't it? The next morning, she asked Adrian casually over breakfast, "Do you know a company called Halcyon Strategic?" He didn't miss a beat. "Sounds familiar, maybe from a hospitality conference." He kissed her forehead and left for a gym appointment. Mia stared at the closed door long after he was gone. By noon, she had called Noah. He answered on the first ring, though his voice was clipped. "What is it?" "I need you in my office, quietly." He arrived within 20 minutes. She shut the door, handed him the printed reports, watched his face harden. "I knew it," he said. "No," Mia whispered, fighting the tremor in her voice. "You suspected. I need facts." Noah looked at her for a long moment. The anger he'd carried dissolved into concern. "Then brace yourself," he said softly, "because if this is what I think it is, you're not just planning a wedding, you're walking into an ambush." And as Mia looked down at the papers in her shaking hands, one terrifying realization began to rise like cold water in her chest. The man she was about to marry might not have fallen in love with her at all. He might have fallen in love with what destroying her could buy. Noah did not speak again until Mia sat down. Her office suddenly felt smaller than it had an hour ago. The same floor-to-ceiling windows that once made her feel powerful now made her feel exposed. Sunlight poured over the polished desk, the cream rug, the bronze sculptures, and the framed magazine covers that celebrated her as though success had made her untouchable. It hadn't. It had only made her visible. Mia pressed her fingers to her temple. "I need you to tell me everything." Noah stayed standing, as if the truth he was about to lay down was too heavy for comfort. "For 3 months, I've been tracking irregular approvals that don't match our standard process, not enough to trigger alarms on their own, small enough to look administrative, consulting fees, escrow timing changes, reallocations in renovation budgets. But they all pass through departments Claire touches, and 2 of the shell firms connect to people Adrian has either introduced or vouched for." Mia swallowed hard. "You should have told me sooner." He tried. He didn't say it cruelly. That made it worse. Her shame rose hot under her skin. She had silenced the one person who had been trying to save her from this. "How much?" she asked. Noah's expression tightened. "At least 2 million so far, maybe more. But I don't think the money is the whole point." Mia looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" He slid another file across the desk. "These aren't just theft patterns. They're positioning patterns. Whoever's doing this has been trying to gain operational access, vendor relationships, internal signatures, property timing, enough to weaken the company if they strike all at once." A cold silence settled between them. Mia felt it then, not just betrayal, but architecture. This had not been a careless affair or a stupid greed-driven scam. It had been designed,
layer by layer, smile by smile, trust by trust. Why? She whispered, though she already knew. Because the fastest way to enter a fortress is through the heart of the person who built it. Noah's voice softened. Mia, I need you to be smarter than hurt right now. She laughed once, bitter and breathless. That might be difficult. He came around the desk and crouched in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. You are not stupid because you loved someone. You are not weak because you wanted a life outside of work. But if Adrian and Claire are working together, then they are counting on your shock. Don't give it to them. His words steadied something inside her. Mia nodded slowly. What do we do? We keep them close, we let them think they're winning, and we find out what they're really after. That evening, Mia smiled through dinner. Adrian took her to a private rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, where candles flickered in glass holders and the scent of rosemary butter drifted from nearby tables. A violinist played somewhere in the corner. The skylights sparkled beneath them. Any other woman would have called it romantic. Mia called it theater. Adrian reached across the table and brushed his thumb over the back of her hand. You seem distracted, he said softly, letting his lashes lower in practiced vulnerability. Just tired, she said, tired of work. Then let me take some of that weight off you. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they scraped against her nerves. He was so good, so calm, so beautifully measured. She searched his face for cracks and found none. Actually, she said, cutting into her salmon with deliberate ease, I've been thinking maybe I should step back a little more after the wedding. His eyes flickered, just once. Not too quick for anyone else. Not too quick for her now. Oh? She nodded. Maybe let Claire oversee the foundation and public arm full-time. Maybe bring in someone I trust to review hospitality expansion. I'm tired of micromanaging everything. Adrian leaned back, as if trying not to appear pleased. That sounds healthy. You deserve a life. He lifted his wine glass. To new beginnings. Mia touched her glass to his. To new beginnings. Inside, something was dying. Over the next 2 weeks, she played the role of the woman still in love. She let Adrian kiss her, let Claire chatter about venues, gowns, guest lists, and floral installations. Let the press believe she was floating toward bliss. But privately, she became ruthless. She moved quietly with Noah, who brought in an outside forensic accountant under strict confidentiality, and a veteran litigator named Elena Dutton, a woman with silver-streaked hair, ice-calm eyes, and a reputation for tearing apart white-collar predators without raising her voice. Elena reviewed the first set of findings in Mia's private study. This is sophisticated, she said, tapping a document with a manicured nail. Layered shell entities, staged approvals, relationship leverage. They're testing how far they can move before you notice. Can we stop it? Elena looked up. Yes, but if you move too early, they'll vanish with what they've already taken and deny the rest. If you wait, they'll attempt the larger play. What larger play? Noah answered before Elena could. The merger vote. Mia's stomach dropped. In 3 weeks, Bennett House International was set to finalize a massive partnership with a luxury investment consortium that would double the company's international reach. If internal confidence collapsed before the vote, the deal could implode. If forged documents surfaced, investors could panic. If cash flow manipulation looked like fraud from the inside, they could make it look like I'm unstable, or reckless, or criminal. Mia nodded. Exactly. They don't just want money. They want leverage, maybe control, maybe to force you out. Mia sat back, pulse pounding. This was bigger than infidelity, bigger than humiliation.
This was annihilation. That night, Helen came over unannounced with homemade lemon bread wrapped in a faded kitchen towel, the way she always did when life had wounded her daughter before Mia admitted it aloud. The older woman took one look at Mia's face and said, "He hurt you." It wasn't a question. Mia broke then. Not loudly, not dramatically. She just folded into herself on the kitchen floor, still wearing silk trousers and a cashmere sweater that cost more than her mother once made in 2 months, and cried like the little girl who used to pretend she wasn't hungry. Helen sat beside her, gathered her close, and held her without asking for explanations. When the tears slowed, Mia whispered, "I let him in." Helen kissed her temple. "Baby, a snake can still bite you even if you built a palace. That doesn't make you foolish. It makes the snake a snake." Mia laughed through the ache. "What if I lose everything?" Helen's face changed then, softness giving way to the old iron she had forged in poverty. "You came into this world with nothing but your mind, your hands, and your will. That empire is not the source of your power. You are. If they take buildings, you build again. If they stain your name, you wash it with truth. If they break your heart, you bury what died and protect what lived." Mia closed her eyes. For the first time since the photo, she felt something stronger than pain: resolve. The next fracture came sooner than expected. 2 days later, at a rehearsal dinner tasting in Malibu, Mia arrived early and found the event coordinator missing. The cliffside venue smelled of salt, peonies, and polished wood. Waves crashed below the terrace in slow thunder. Staff moved around her carrying sample place settings and glassware. She had come looking for Claire. Instead, she found Adrian. He stood in a side hallway, speaking in low, urgent tones. "After the signature's clear," he said. "No mistakes this time." Mia stepped back into shadow before he saw her. Another voice answered. "Claire." "I know," she snapped, "but she's getting suspicious." "Then keep her emotional." Mia felt her entire body go still. The hallway blurred. Claire exhaled sharply. "I've done more than enough. When this is over, I want exactly what we agreed." "You'll get it." "And what about her?" A pause. Then Adrian laughed softly. "By the time she understands what happened, she won't matter." Something primal ripped through Mia's chest. Not heartbreak, not even rage. Something colder. She stepped away before either of them emerged, crossed the terrace with perfect posture, and when Claire appeared moments later, breathless and smiling, Mia smiled back so beautifully that Claire didn't notice death had entered the room. "My darling," Claire said, linking arms with her. "You look pale." "Just nerves," Mia replied. Adrian joined them, slipping a hand around her waist. "Cold feet?" he teased. Mia tilted her face up and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "Not at all." If either of them heard the steel beneath her tone, they ignored it. That night, she called Elena. "No more waiting," Mia said. Elena was silent for one beat. "What changed?" "I heard them." "Do you have proof?" "Not yet." "Then you still wait." Mia gripped the phone so hard her knuckles whitened. "I want them destroyed." "You will have your chance," Elena said, voice calm as winter. "But destruction without evidence is emotion. Destruction with evidence is justice. Decide which woman you want to be." The line went quiet. Mia breathed in, then out. "Justice," she said at last. "Good. Then we keep building the case." From that moment, the trap became intricate. Noah quietly flagged internal access logs. Elena secured court-ready documentation. Mia placed subtle barriers around the company's most sensitive authorizations while pretending to relax her guard. She allowed a limited signature protocol to be temporarily simplified under the excuse of wedding fatigue, knowing it would lure them toward the larger move. Meanwhile, Adrian intensified his tenderness. He brought her breakfast in bed, he left handwritten notes in her purse, he kissed her like a man who meant forever. Sometimes that was the hardest part, because some nights when his hand rested on her back as they slept, Mia hated herself for remembering what comfort felt like before truth entered the room. And because betrayal is cruelest when it is wrapped in genuine-seeming affection. One rainy Thursday, while the city glowed under slick streets and traffic hissed against pavement, Adrian found her sitting alone in the penthouse library. "Hey," he said gently, "you've been miles away lately." Mia looked up from the book she wasn't reading.
I'm just overwhelmed. He sat beside her, close enough that she could smell cedarwood on his skin. Talk to me. She turned, searching his face. Do you ever wonder if people love us for the wrong reasons? His expression softened with practiced concern. Who hurt you before me? The irony nearly made her laugh. Instead, she let silence tremble between them. Then Adrian took her hand. When I met you, I knew you were extraordinary. Not because of your money, because of your strength. Because even in a room full of people trying to impress each other, you were the only one who looked real. Mia's chest tightened. If he was lying, he deserved an award. If some part of him meant it, he was even more dangerous. She let tears fill her eyes, real tears this time, because grief and performance had become indistinguishable. What if I lose everything? She whispered. He kissed her forehead. You won't. I'll never let that happen. And that was the moment she understood something devastating. He didn't just know how to deceive her, he knew exactly what she needed to hear while doing it. The merger week arrived like a storm front. Investors flew in, press attention intensified, wedding coverage swelled online, Bennett House stock climbed on speculation of the global partnership. Internally, the company moved at high speed, every department tense with deadlines. On Tuesday morning, the first strike landed. A financial blog published an anonymous exposé alleging internal fund mismanagement at Bennett House International. It referenced vague luxury shell expenditures, unnamed insider concerns, and possible executive misuse of discretionary funds. By 1 p.m., 2 larger outlets had picked it up. By 2 p.m., Mia's phone was exploding. Investors demanded clarity, board members panicked, a lender froze a pending release until documentation was reviewed. Mia sat at the head of the emergency boardroom while faces around the table blurred into fear, accusation, and corporate politeness. One board member, a man who had praised her vision for years, cleared his throat and said, "For the good of the company, perhaps we should consider temporarily shifting executive authority until this is resolved." The room chilled. There it was, the move. Not just scandal, displacement. Mia looked around the table, every instinct in her screaming. Adrian sat in the back row as a personal guest, looking concerned. Claire sat near the communications lead, pale and composed, playing her role to perfection. Noah passed her a folder under the table. Not yet, his eyes said. She inhaled slowly, then out. Then she stood. I built this company from an abandoned duplex and a credit score no bank respected. I understand fear. I understand optics. But I will not step down because anonymous cowards timed a smear campaign to a merger vote.
Murmurs rippled. She continued. All requested documents will be provided. Every allegation will be addressed, and anyone inside this company feeding lies to the press should pray they are better at hiding than they are at scheming. Claire's face flickered. Adrian did not move. The meeting adjourned in tension. That night, the second strike came. A forged transfer authorization surfaced, one appearing to bear Mia's approval on a suspicious overseas property fund. If accepted as real, it would suggest she had personally signed off on improper movement of capital. Elena reviewed it in Mia's office at 11:40 p.m. It's fake, she said immediately, but it's good. Can we prove it? Yes, and that means they're escalating because they think you're cornered. Noah looked grim. Then tomorrow is the play. They'll try to trigger collapse before the merger session. Mia stared at the city beyond the glass. Everything inside her had been stripped down to essentials. No illusions, no softness, no confusion. Only truth and the will to survive it. What do they need from me tomorrow? She asked. Elena answered. A panic, a resignation, a bad reaction, or one last signature. Mia turned slowly. Then let's give them a stage. The next day, she invited Adrian to lunch in her private executive dining suite. He arrived in a charcoal suit, face arranged in concern. I'm worried about you, he said, the moment the door closed. The scandal is spreading. Claire thinks the board might force temporary restructuring. Claire talks too much, Mia replied, pouring sparkling water into 2 glasses.
He smiled faintly. You're handling this well. I'm trying. She sat across from him and let exhaustion show. I don't know if I can fight all of this and plan a wedding and keep everyone calm. Adrian reached for her hand. Then don't. She looked up. Maybe this is the moment to protect yourself. If you step back voluntarily, just for a little while, and makes you look responsible, not guilty, let the board stabilize things. You can return when the dust settles. There it was, the knife wrapped in advice. And if I don't? He sighed like a man carrying someone else's burden. Then they'll tear you apart publicly. Mia lowered her eyes. I don't want that. You don't have to. He opened a leather folio and slid a document toward her. I had legal draft a temporary delegation package, just a few signatures. Noah can handle operations. Claire can manage external relations. I can help coordinate the transition so no one takes advantage. Mia stared at the paper. Temporary delegation, expanded authority, emergency asset access. If she signed it, they would have what they wanted. She let her hand tremble above the page. Adrian moved closer, voice soft as silk. Trust me. She looked into the face she had once imagined waking beside for decades. Then she picked up the pen and signed. Adrian's shoulders loosened almost imperceptibly. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. You're doing the right thing. She smiled faintly. I know. At 4 p.m., the board assembled for the merger session. At 4:07, Adrian sent the signed document onward. At 4:11, Claire privately messaged 3 press contacts that Mia Bennett was expected to step down amid widening internal concerns. At 4:14, the false narrative began moving. At 4:20, Mia walked into the boardroom wearing ivory silk, diamond studs, and the expression of a woman about to be buried. At 4:21, Adrian believed he had won. At 4:22, Mia closed the doors behind her and said, Before we proceed, I'd like all phones collected and the room recorded. The room stilled. Adrian's head turned sharply. Claire's smile faltered. Elena entered from the side door with 2 legal associates, followed by a forensic accountant and a court reporter. Noah set 3 binders on the table. Mia took her seat, and for the first time in weeks, she felt calm. I have spent the last month being lied to by people I loved and manipulated by people who mistook my heart for weakness. This meeting will now serve as formal notice of fraud, conspiracy, attempted corporate theft, and intentional reputational sabotage. Adrian's face drained of color. Claire stood halfway. Mia, what are you doing? Finishing what you started. Elena opened the first binder. Exhibit Set 1, forensic tracing of shell entities connected to Miss Claire Dawson through 2 proxy managers and 1 undeclared beneficiary trust. Claire's mouth opened. No sound came out. Exhibit Set 2, communications metadata linking Mr. Adrian Sullivan to those same entities, plus private access records to confidential company materials under false pretense. Adrian stood. This is absurd. Sit down, Elena said. He didn't. Noah slid a tablet across the table and hit play. The audio filled the room. Claire's voice. She still trusts me. Don't rush it. Adrian's. After the signature's clear. No mistakes this time. Claire. What about her? Adrian, lightly amused. By the time she understands what happened, she won't matter. Silence detonated. A board member cursed under his breath. Another woman covered her mouth. Claire's knees nearly buckled as she grabbed the chair. Adrian lunged for the tablet. Security, already stationed outside at Elena's instruction, entered instantly and blocked him. This recording was obtained lawfully under private property consent parameters, Elena said before he could protest. We also have digital evidence of document forgery, prearranged press leaks, staged account manipulation, and attempted inducement of executive displacement. Mia reached into her folder and held up the paper Adrian had convinced her to sign. You thought this gave you emergency access, she said, voice deadly quiet. It didn't. He stared. She smiled without warmth. It was a decoy. Elena drafted a mirrored version that triggered an internal legal hold the second you transmitted it. Every recipient, every forward, every linked account flagged. Adrian's composure shattered. You set me up. No, Mia said. I let you finish revealing yourself. Claire burst into tears. Mia, please listen to me. He said, Don't. Mia's voice cracked like glass. Do not insult me by making him your excuse. Claire sobbed openly now, mascara streaking. I was angry. I was tired of always being second, tired of being the side character in your perfect life. Mia stared at her, stunned, not by the confession, but by the pettiness of it. Perfect? She whispered. I was there when I had panic attacks before investor meetings. I was there when I sent money home and pretended it didn't hurt. I was there when I slept on office couches and smiled through migraines and grief. You watched every scar it took to build this and still envied me? Claire shook with shame. You had everything. No, Mia said. I had to build everything. Adrian straightened, abandoning charm for contempt. You think you're better than everyone because you clawed your way up. You make people feel small. Claire just wanted what you would never have given freely. Mia's heartbreak died completely in that instant, not because of the insult, because she finally saw him without the fog of love. Small. Not powerful, not brilliant. Small. He had studied her strength and mistaken it for arrogance because lesser people often resent what they cannot become. Mia stood. Remove them. Security moved in. Claire collapsed into pleading sobs. Adrian struggled, then stilled when Elena added, Any resistance will worsen the criminal and civil exposure already pending. As they were let out, Adrian turned once more. You'll still be humiliated. The story is already out. Mia met his gaze. Then Anna'll tell the truth louder. After the door shut behind them, the room remained frozen. Board members stared at Mia as if seeing her for the first time, not as the glamorous founder, not as the tabloid bride, but as a woman who had been hunted in her own house and still arrived armed with evidence instead of panic. The consortium representative, a stern woman from London who had remained silent through the spectacle, finally spoke. I've spent 20 years in acquisitions, and I've never seen crisis management like that. A nervous laugh broke the tension. Then the woman added, If anything, Ms. Bennett, this confirms exactly why your company is worth backing. The merger vote passed, unanimously. The next 48 hours were brutal. The scandal exploded, but now the truth exploded with it. Media outlets reversed course. Clips circulated of Mia's poised boardroom statement. Analysts praised her restraint and strategic response. Legal filings hit hard and fast. Frozen accounts, fraud claims, conspiracy charges, asset recovery, injunctions. Claire disappeared from public view. Adrian's reputation collapsed almost overnight. But public victory did not erase private wreckage. On the first night after the boardroom confrontation, Mia returned to her penthouse, removed her engagement ring, and placed it on the kitchen counter. It made a small sound. Tiny.
Pathetic. She stared at it for a long time. Then she opened the window and let the cold night air flood in. Noah found her there an hour later, still in silence. You should sleep, he said gently. I don't know how. He came to stand beside her. The city below looked alive and indifferent. I keep replaying everything, she admitted. Every dinner, every trip, every word. I don't know what was real. Noah didn't rush to answer. That's the cruel part, he said quietly. Sometimes pieces of it were probably real, but real moments inside a lie don't make the lie less poisonous. Mia's eyes filled again. I hate that I still miss who I thought he was. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. She turned to him. For years, Noah had been a constant. Steady, stubborn, often infuriating, always there. She'd leaned on him professionally without fully noticing the emotional gravity he carried around her. Now, in the raw aftermath of betrayal, she saw it. And perhaps, for the first time, she let herself feel the safety of it. You stayed, she whispered. He gave a sad half-smile. You'd have to do a lot worse to get rid of me. She laughed, and the sound cracked into a sob. Without thinking, she stepped into him. Noah held her, not possessively, not opportunistically, just carefully, as though heartbreak was a physical wound and he had no intention of deepening it. For a long time they stood there while the city pulsed below. When he finally pulled back, his hand lingered briefly against her cheek. And then, because timing mattered and decency mattered, and she had only just crawled out of a burning house, he stepped away. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything," he said. That restraint did more to heal her than any grand declaration could have. Weeks passed. The legal battle continued, but the core victory was already hers. Most of the diverted funds were recovered. Several shell accounts were frozen before they could be emptied. The forged documents unraveled under expert review. A former assistant of Claire's, racked with guilt, came forward with emails proving Claire had spent months feeding press contacts and coordinating emotional manipulation strategies. One message read, "Keep her in wedding mode. She stops thinking when she starts hoping." Mia nearly vomited when she read it. And yet, with each new piece of truth, the poison left her system. She stopped asking why. Predators look for openings. That was all. She moved out of the penthouse for a while and into Helen's guest suite in the hills, where mornings smelled like coffee and cinnamon and birdsong instead of marble and silence. She walked barefoot in the garden. She attended fewer galas. She stopped answering every email at midnight. She went to therapy, privately and consistently, even when it felt embarrassing to admit she needed it, especially then. One afternoon, while pruning roses with gloved hands and terrible technique, she asked Helen, "How do you know when you've healed?" Helen chuckled. "You don't. One day you just realize their name doesn't change your breathing anymore." Mia looked down at the thorn she'd just snapped. "And if it still hurts?" "Then it still hurts. Healing isn't pride, baby. It's honesty." That summer, Mia made a decision no one expected. Instead of retreating into luxury and silence, she launched a new initiative under the Bennett Foundation, Rise Again, a national grant and legal support program for women recovering from emotional and financial abuse in intimate relationships. Not a vanity project. A real one. Emergency housing support, business rebuilding grants, private legal clinics, trauma counseling access, financial literacy programs. At the press conference, cameras flashed while reporters leaned forward. A journalist asked, "Why make something so personal so public?" Mia stood at the podium in cream suit, the California sun warm across her shoulders, and answered with calm conviction. Because shame survives in silence, and because too many people lose twice, first to the betrayal, then to the embarrassment of being betrayed. I refuse that script. What happened to me was painful, but it is not the most interesting thing about me. What I build after is. The clip went viral. Women wrote to her from every state. Some were CEOs, some were nurses, some were teachers, waitresses, stylists, students, mothers. Different incomes, same wounds. Mia read as many letters as she could, and every letter made her feel less alone. One evening, months later, after a long day reviewing Rise Again applications, she found Noah waiting outside the foundation office with 2 takeout bags and that familiar, patient look. "You forgot dinner again," he said. I smiled. "You always appear when I'm neglecting myself." "It's a gift." They ate on the office terrace as the sun dipped behind the skyline, the air warm and gold. For a while, they talked about work, then not work, then childhood stories, then fears. Real ones. Noah told her about his father leaving when he was 12, about how it made him obsessive about reliability, about how he sometimes over-controlled situations because chaos still frightened him. Mia told her about nights she used to pretend to be asleep, so Helen wouldn't feel guilty for skipping meals. Their laughter came easier now. Their silences, too. When the city lights began to rise, Noah looked at her for a long moment. "I need to say something, and if the timing is wrong, I'll live with that." Mia's breath caught. He continued, careful and honest, "I loved you before any of this. I buried it because you didn't need complicated feelings from someone who worked beside you. Then, when Adrian came along, I told myself protecting the company was enough. Maybe it was cowardly, maybe it was respectful, maybe both. Her heart pounded. He looked away briefly, then back. I'm not saying this because you were hurt. I'm saying this because I refuse to build a life around unsaid truths. You don't owe me anything, not now, maybe not ever. But I love the woman you are when no one is watching. The stubborn, overthinking, kind, relentless woman who still worries if everyone else got home safe. That's the truth. Mia didn't speak first. Tears burned behind her eyes, not from pain this time, but from the terrifying tenderness of being seen without agenda. You stayed, she whispered. He gave a sad half-smile. I know. You stayed when it cost you. I know. She laughed shakily through tears. That's very inconvenient. He smiled. I'm aware. She stepped closer. Not because she was lonely, not because she needed rescue, not because she wanted to replace one man with another, but because months of truth, grief, healing, and quiet consistency had grown into something undeniable. When she kissed him, it was soft, uncertain, and utterly different from the feverish glamour she had once mistaken for destiny. Noah kissed her back like a man grateful enough to be gentle. No fireworks exploded, no violins swelled, just warmth, safety, choice. And for Mia, that was infinitely more romantic. Their relationship unfolded slowly after that, deliberately, maturely, without spectacle. They restructured reporting lines at work, set boundaries, told Helen first, who pretended to be shocked for exactly 3 seconds before saying, "It's about time." They kept it private for months. No staged photos, no magazine leaks, no desperate proving. Just dinners that turned into late walks, hard conversations that deepened trust, mornings where coffee was shared in peace, and a kind of intimacy that was built instead of performed. Mia learned what healthy love felt like. It was not dazzling all the time. It was dependable. It was being able to say, I'm afraid, and not feel smaller after. It was someone hearing no and not trying to charm it into a yes. It was conflict without manipulation, desire without deceit, presence without performance. A year later, on the anniversary of the boardroom confrontation, Bennett House International opened its flagship luxury hotel in Barcelona. The rooftop launch party overlooked the sea. String lights glowed against the night, champagne sparkled in crystal flutes. Music drifted warm across the terrace. Investors toasted, executives smiled. The press called it one of the strongest comeback years in modern corporate history. But Mia barely noticed the headlines anymore. She stood near the edge of the rooftop, ocean wind teasing loose strands of her elegant updo, and looked out over the city lights with a strange sense of peace. Noah came to stand beside her. You disappeared. I escaped. He handed her a glass. To what? She smiled faintly. To surviving things I thought would end me. He clinked his glass gently against hers. You did more than survive. She looked at him. The man who had warned her. Stayed. Waited. Told the truth when it was uncomfortable.
Loved her without trying to own her. I know, she said softly. He reached into his pocket. Mia blinked. Noah. He exhaled a nervous laugh. Before you panic, this isn't pressure. This is a question for whenever the answer feels right. He opened a small velvet box. Inside was not a giant diamond, not some dramatic trophy stone meant for cameras. Instead, it held a graceful ring. Simple, elegant, deeply thoughtful, set with a central stone flanked by 2 smaller ones. For your past, your present, and whatever future you choose, he said. Mia's eyes filled instantly. I'm not asking because I think you need someone. You proved long ago that you don't. I'm asking because I think love is better when it stands beside strength instead of feeding on it, and because if we keep building this life together, I'd like to keep doing it on purpose. The sea breeze carried laughter from behind them. Glasses clinked. The city shimmered below. Mia thought of the girl in Chicago with cold hands and hungry nights, the young woman swinging a hammer in an abandoned duplex,
the mogul and the penthouse, staring at betrayal reflected in glass. The woman on the kitchen floor, weeping into her mother's lap. The founder in the boardroom, refusing to surrender. The survivor who chose healing over hiding. And the woman standing here now, not untouched, but unbroken. She smiled through tears. "Yes," she said. Noah's breath left him in a stunned laugh. "Yeah?" "Yes," she repeated, laughing now too. "But if you ever try emotional manipulation, I own excellent lawyers." He grinned. "Noted." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit. Of course it fit. Somewhere behind them, Helen, who had absolutely been spying from a discreet distance, let out a triumphant little shout that made both of them turn and burst into laughter. The party erected when people realized what had happened, but even in the middle of applause and celebration, Mia felt a stillness inside her she had never known before. Not the stillness of emptiness, the stillness of arrival. Months later, at a private ceremony in Tuscany, attended only by family, a few close friends, and people who had earned their place in her life, Mia married Noah under olive trees and late summer light. No press, no spectacle, no performance. Just vows written by hand and spoken with clear eyes. When it was her turn, Mia held Noah's hands and said, "I used to think love was proven by how much of yourself you were willing to surrender. I know better now. Real love does not ask you to disappear. It asks you to be fully seen, and stays." There were tears, even from Noah, especially from Helen. And as the sun dipped low and music rose through the vineyard air, Mia danced barefoot again. But this time, she was not dancing on the edge of illusion. She was dancing in truth. In the years that followed, Bennett House expanded further than anyone predicted. Rise Again became a national force, then an international one. Women who had once believed their worst mistake would define them found grants, counsel, community, and courage through what Mia had built from her pain. Claire eventually accepted a plea deal and vanished into a quiet life far from cameras. Mia never spoke to her again. Adrienne tried once, one letter forwarded through legal counsel, full of self-pity disguised as regret. Mia never opened it. She had no need. Some doors do not deserve closure. They deserve locks. And on a cool autumn evening years later, in a home filled with warm light, books, laughter, and the scent of dinner drifting from the kitchen, Mia stood by the window while Noah set the table behind her. Outside, their daughter raced across the lawn with Helen, who still moved slower now, but laughed just as loudly. The sky burned orange and gold. Mia touched the ring on her finger and smiled. There had been a time when she believed betrayal had ruined her. It hadn't. It had revealed what needed rebuilding. It had stripped away illusion and left her face to face with the strongest parts of herself. Love had nearly destroyed her once, but only the counterfeit kind. The real kind had found her later, after the tears, after the truth, after the fire. And because she had chosen healing over bitterness, wisdom over revenge, and courage over shame, the life waiting on the other side was richer than the one she had lost. Not because it was easier, because it was honest. And that was the victory no one could ever steal. So if you're listening right now, wherever you are in the world, remember this. Not everyone who enters your life deserves access to your heart. Not every heartbreak is the end of your story, and losing what was false may be the first step towards finding what is real. Because sometimes the most powerful version of a person is not the one who never falls. It's the one who rises, wiser, softer, stronger, and never again mistakes pain for love.